This conference is no longer being recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
I hereby call to order this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors Budget Work Session. Before I ask for public comment, I'd like to make a couple of introductions. I'd like to reintroduce to the community Mr. Travis Kusenberry, who has graciously accepted our invitation to act as our interim county administrator while we conduct our executive search. So, Mr. Kusenberry, welcome back, and thank you very much.
You're welcome. Glad to be back.
Thank you. And also, we had a citizen budget appointee who arrived after our other appointees were afforded the opportunity to introduce themselves. So I want to go ahead and allow Dahlgren citizen appointee, Mr. Chapman, the opportunity to introduce himself as well. Go ahead, sir.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Cecil Chapman, and I really truly look forward to being here and helping through this process.
Thank you, sir, for volunteering. All right, we'll open the floor for public comment. Do we have anyone here in the audience for public comment? Seeing Mr. Dines, do you have anyone online for public comment, sir? Thank you. We'll close public comment and we'll move on to County Department line by line budget review. Mr. Kusenberry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jenkins could not be here tonight, so I'm going to cover the landfill budget for you. Do everybody have a copy of the landfill budget? It's approximately a $30,000 increase in the landfill budget. A portion of that is for salary increases. That's because one employee resigned and was replaced by another employee, and that employee that replaced that person was a previous county employee who had a higher salary. So it's an increase there. And of course, the associated costs with FICA, everything else associated with that higher salary, those increase also. In addition, the health insurance premiums increase because the previous employee had less dependents than the current employee has, or the new employee. Other than that, moving down the categories, when you come down to repair and maintenance for contract services, that's the landfill has 4 vehicles that they take care of and are responsible for, so that cost includes that. Telecommunications, that cost has increased because the landfill now has a separate internet system, and the charges are associated with that connection to the internet and that connection to the county server. Cell phones haven't changed. The lease rent of equipment, there's 2 items on that lease. One is a vehicle and the other is a copier. Travel is, I think that's up, increased a little bit. That's because the travel and the conferences, that didn't happen last year, and 3 employees need to get recertified. And that also includes their certifications from the Solid Waste Association of North America and the Virginia Solid Waste license. So those costs are associated in that. Of course, the fuels cost, it looks like gasoline is going up this year, so we put a little bit extra money in there for fuel. And the other 2 items are pretty standard things, the supplies for the vehicles and the uniforms and wearing apparel. Be happy to answer any questions if any board member has any.
Mr. Granger. Mr. Stonehill. Do you want me to pass for a moment? Okay. Ms. Bender?
I'm good.
Mr. Bush? Citizens? Any questions? So I actually have 2 questions, sir. The first is, I know the landfill, sorry, I say you, there is a line item for uniforms and wearing apparel. So I'm assuming they are supplied with some type of shirt,
they are
coveralls or something.
Shirts. I think in the past they had uniforms, and at some point in time that changed, so now they only receive shirts.
Okay. And then there is a line item for laundry, dry cleaning that is scratched the whole way across. So do they do their own, laundry and there aren't any issues with that and everyone has a clean appearance and we don't have any carryover from the prior workday with what we're wearing and given the nature of the work that they do? That's why I'm asking that.
Yes, I think I haven't heard any issues associated with that, but I think every time I see them, they look very neat and professional.
And then if you can just let Mr. Jenkins know that if it is an issue for his staff and there is a need, that they should feel free to bring it to us if there is a concern with that.
I'd be glad to do that.
And then my other question is, could we ask him, and I don't know if he could get it done for this budget, but maybe going forward, signage at the convenience centers. So the signs, a lot of them are handmade, is the nicest thing that I can say, and don't really reflect professionally. And I get that it's a landfill and it's where you take your trash. I get that. But I just think some of the signage there could maybe be improved at not a great cost.
I agree. Yeah, that's those signages they need better signages to those centers.
Okay, yeah. So if he can work up something for that, and even if he has to bring it to us later and it doesn't get captured here, but that's something that I would like to see.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So we're good with landfill then, everyone? All right, if you would like to move on, I believe general properties is next.
All right, that's correct. We have Mr. Muncie here. He's a general properties manager, and he will go over his budget for you.
I'll go for it. Okay.
Whenever you're ready, go ahead,
All right.
Mr. Muncie.
Line item 3310, the repair and maintenance contracted services. Right now, let's see, the parks and general property stayed the same. I added a fire alarm replacement for the Rivercombe building. This is it's called a Faraday, is the alarm system. Well, years ago, Simplex bought them out, and now the parts are unavailable. Right now, I just had to replace the one at Parks and Rec because I can't buy a detector, and that was like the sum of $14,000. So I've gotten a price to replace this one before it goes bad, and the only other one we have in the county is at Company One. So I've added that. I've added security lights at the back of the sheriff's building. When you go down there at night, they've added the fence around the front, but in the back, it's totally dark. So I think we need to add some lights there. The other one I added was the main service at Barnesfield. The service is 27 to 28 years old. It's a good service. It's a square D box, but when they extended the dugouts, this is where I found out the problem. They drove a pole through the main feeders to the concession stand. Well, the breaker that I had to replace that with, when I found it, was $800, and it's a rebuilt breaker, and I had to do that twice. So that's why I'm kind of looking at hopefully to replace that service sometime down the line, if not, sooner. Because like I said, sooner or later, the parts are going to be unavailable. So, and that's all I had on that line item. Any questions?
Nope. Mr. Stonehill? Ms. Binder? Mr. Bush, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Muncy, you just spoke about this breaker. So that's at the schools. Would that be out of the school's budget?
No, that's at Barnesfield.
Oh,
Barnesfield.
I'm sorry. 'Cause-
No, you're all right.
Yeah, I was reading and caught half of it, so I apologize. Thank you very much. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
The next line item is 3320 maintenance service contracts. Everything's pretty much stayed the same. If you look down at the bottom in the notes where it said select service increased $55,000, I forgot to delete that when I did the budget, but it does increase every year a percentage. So this year it increased $3,800. And this is the second year of that select service, which we've saved a lot of money by going to the select service so far. The only other change I did was with the generators. We had a problem back at the sheriff's office, I would say late fall last year, and we had an interruption with the power service, and the generator wouldn't come on. It tried to and tried to. When I had the technician come out, it ended up being the switches within the transfer switch, which we do a PM on them anyway, but they don't check actually, or I guess ring out or check the ohms on the switches within the service itself, or the switch gear. So that increase was about $7,000, which I've already implemented because we definitely need that to work when we need it. So, and I think that was the only increase on that. Yes, that was it for that line item. Line item 5410, lease and rent of equipment. We lease one vehicle right now with Enterprise. We got rid of one we bought out this past year. And then of course, the Porta Johns. So actually this line lowered. Okay. Here's some requests for some equipment. I asked for this last year, and like I said, a lot of this was approved, but because of COVID, it was taken back. This year, I'm asking for 2 zero-turn mowers to replace 2 Ferris mowers and or 1 Ferris mower and a 72-inch X-Mark, with both of them having over 2,000 hours on them. One more is going to the sheriff's office, which is one of the oldest mowers I have, and the one that's there will actually go back out in the field. And the other one I want to replace is for the well lots, because what I've got is just, I spend a lot of money on repairs on mowers, and I'd like to, I was in the process of trying to do a rotation, and with last year, to skip that. The trailer I'm asking for is for the tractor that we got 2 years ago. It has a front bucket on it, but when we put the backhoe on the tractor, it won't fit. So we have to put the backhoe on one, or not the backhoe, excuse me, but the tractor on one trailer, the bush hog on another, takes another truck, 2 other people to move it, down to Barnesfield and where we have, the well lots where we have to bush hog. So that I feel is definitely needed. And last, I'm asking for a truck. I've turned in 2 trucks on the 1920 budget and then asked for this replacement, which was approved last year, but of course, again, was taken back. And then I've turned in 2 others this year. 2 of them had snow plows, which I'm asking for a snow plow on the new truck. The trucks were either high mileage, so high that it was time to scrap them. One, and they said that, they told me at the inspection station, don't even bring it back because it's rusted so bad. So So that's why I'm asking for that. Because right now, if I have a truck that breaks down, I actually have to send the guys out to a well lot with a plow truck. That's what I have left. So I'm depleted to the bare bones. So, any questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Granger.
I just had a question for actually Mr. Kusenberry. I see on line 8101, the county administrator's adjustment, and I was just wondering what the motivation was for that.
I haven't made any adjustments yet. That may have been the previous interim county administrator.
Back in. Okay.
So anywhere you see county administrator adjustments, that's I'm not there.
Okay. I thought that might be the case, but I thought I'd ask. Do you know anything about that line item? And do you know any reason why we would want to reduce it?
What was that line item?
8101 rep capital outlay machinery equipment. I'm not sure what that means exactly.
Do you know? Yes, Donna can address that, I believe.
Sorry, say again?
Donna can.
Donna, okay.
Yes, at, excuse me, last week's budget work session, Mr. Hughes mentioned that he was compiling a list of one-time purchases. And I'm not sure exactly his reasoning behind, but this was one item that he put on that list that he had us take out of the budget. But I believe it was the only one that he had us zero it out in the budget.
Across all the different departments? Or, okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Mr. Stonehill?
Your lawnmowers, it always gets me. You got 2 or 3 sitting over here, I guess, in the shed. Do you still have just one in the shed?
One that does this building and that does the library.
Has there been any thought about, as opposed to just having one at each building or 2 at each building, whatever it may be, that it gets used, twice a week maybe, and it just sits there the other, 4 to 5 days or something, not being used? Has there been any thought about moving them around to keep using them as opposed to just letting them sit in all the different buildings when they're not being used?
Who's going to move them? Because like the one that's up at Parks and Rec, that does also Company One. Okay, and then like I said, this one stays here. The rest of them are at the parks, and we move them. Other than Barnesfield stays there because it's a 72-inch, but the other ones are moved from the park over to Ralph Bunch, or Sealston stays at Sealston.
I was just thinking of like when the young guys are driving around with the Explorer and they have 2 mowers and a couple of weed eaters on the back.
They're headed to the well lots.
Right, and they're
like
hitting all the places.
70 well lots, the processing plants, and the pump stations that we have to maintain. So that's why you see 2 mowers on that, that trailer. Yeah.
Okay, that's all I have.
And I can tell you, Mr. Stonehill, that when Ms. Bender and I were at the Service Authority budget work session last Thursday night, Mr. Weekly did mention that your department does the grass cutting for them. So I can get what you're saying here, that
we do the grass cutting. We also maintain the area around their fence. Today we're cutting trees off the fence lines and stuff for them today. So
okay. Ms. Bender?
I had one question on line 5420, the lease rent building. Is that for the building up in the industrial park?
yes.
Okay, thank you. And that's a yearly lease, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Bush?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, not really specific to a line item on the budget, but going back to when Mr. Muncy was talking about turning in the vehicles and how they were approved the last year, and we're looking at the needs for this year. I pinged off of what you said. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk so loud in this microphone, but, so the previous interim county administrator was compiling a list of one-time purchases. Is that what he was looking at to utilize that additional, $3 million or whatever it was that we were seeing? Because if that was something we weren't counting on, we don't want to use that for reoccurring costs that we're looking at. But the vehicles and even the lawnmowers have been pushed back. They're always hit hard. I know I hit hard against them last year, but we're in a position where we're starting to see that need and weighing that with the revenues we have to work with. I think I like that idea of those one-time purchases and then getting onto a rotation similar to what we do with the school buses, what we do at fire rescue, sheriff's office. So that one-time expenditure, I really support that approach. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, if I can weigh in, that
Go
is
ahead.
something that we've been talking about, and we used to do that years ago, where we would take carryable funds for one-time purchases, exactly like is being proposed this year. And we're in a process of compiling that list now.
Very good, thank you. Citizens with questions regarding the general properties line by line? No? Okay, we'll move on. Thank you, Mr. Muncy.
All right, thank you.
The next item is outside agencies. And Chris, can you put up the slide with or whoever's got the button? Come down a couple more. Right there. Okay. This is this list of we don't need that slide, Chris. Yeah, this slide right here. This is a list of outside agencies that the board funded last year. Three of those agencies, the top three that are not in bold, are non-mandated agencies. And the ones that are in bold below that, those are either mandated by the state or mandated by some type of regulatory requirement or regional requirement. So on this list, the three non-mandated agencies have no increases proposed. On the mandated agencies, the George Washington Regional Commission is requesting additional funds. I believe they had a request last year for additional funds, and that was not approved. I'm not sure. And the other increase is the Rappahannock Community Services Board. They're asking for an increase, and that's due to a mental health program, I believe, is the reason for that request. We also provided the board with a handout that shows all of the requests by the outside agencies. There's a number of agencies that's on that list that were not funded last year. So you got any questions, or if you want to think about whether you want to add any of those agencies back, or you're satisfied with this list, just let us know.
Mr. Granger?
Personally, I'm inclined for anything that's not required unless we can show some kind of, I know in the past we've looked at some of these line items and like social services came and I think they spoke to maybe was Deloitte at the Moss Free Clinic and we're able to justify that if we spend the $4,000, we'd end up saving more money than that they wouldn't have to spend. And so it was good justification to say, okay, let's use taxpayer dollars towards this unfunded or this non-required, request. But if we don't have a way to justify that it's going to maybe be a cost savings to the taxpayer, I'm hard pressed to, not that any of them are bad agencies, but I would prefer to allow citizens to make the decision if they want to donate to those agencies, then they have every right, and they can use those dollars to donate to them. But I'd prefer not to use taxpayer dollars if we don't have a good justification.
Mr. Stonehill?
I think we've been around this a couple of times over the last few years about all the non-funded ones, and I mean, I'm okay with the ones that we have on here. You know, we always go back and forth with the Moss Clinic, but the Moss Clinic serves a whole lot of people here in King George County and all the other counties. I think that is something that's a very good thing, and it serves quite a few people here in the county. Yeah, I'm fine with these ones that are on here.
Ms. Bender?
I have one question for Mr. Kusenberry, and you probably are going to have to find out it for the Rappahannock Area Agency on Aging. I serve on that, and could you double check with Pat Holland, that's the executive director, to make sure that they're still going by this exact, because they rebranded themselves Healthy Generations. So we probably should have it the correct way on here.
Okay, we will do that.
Thank you.
Ms. Bender, as chairman of GWRC, would you like to address the increase for GWRC?
Well, that I will have to get back to, because that budget they are still working on, and so I have not seen that, so I will have to get back on that one to what the added cost is.
Okay, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will agree with Mr. Granger, unless I know, like with social services, there are certain organizations that if you participate, then there aren't those individual costs for mandated services that they have to provide. If we don't participate, then it's done at an incident by incident type assessment, which will cost us a lot more in the long run. So I'd be interested to see what the new director of social services brings forward to us. Aside from that, if there's no real return on investment from that aspect that we would save money, if it's not a mandated organization, I would say let the individual taxpayer make the decision if they want to donate money or not. I can't justify, making a decision to give to a nonprofit organization with taxpayer money.
So I'll chime in as far as the non-mandated agencies. Personally, with regard to Lloyd Moss Free Clinic and Thurman Brisbane Homeless Shelter, I do think that they provide critical sheltering services to the homeless in our community, as well as health care and dental care services to those lacking health insurance. So I am rather inclined to continue honoring those requests. I just probably I probably have not educated myself well enough on Disability Resource Center to speak one way or the other with regard to their function and what they provide the community. I don't know if board members would like to have, I know in the past we've had certain outside agency representatives come and present. We've delayed a decision on outside agencies until they have come and present justification for exactly how much they do directly benefit our citizens. I don't know if the will of the board is to entertain that. Mr. Granger, yes?
I'm amenable if anyone would like to come to advocate for why they think it's a good idea, then sure, I'm always willing to listen.
Mr. Stonehill, yes. Ms. Bender, yes. Mr. Bush?
If you guys want to.
Okay. Citizens? Would anyone like to address anything individually? No? Okay. So as far as the non-mandated agencies go, could we reach out to a representative and see if they're available to attend a future work session to provide us some more data?
It's just all three?
I think all three of the non-mandated at the top there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that would be Disability Resource Center, Lloyd Moss Free Clinic, and Thurman Brisbane Homeless Shelter.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Bender.
In the past, we've had a list given to us of all the outside agencies that have actually put in a request. Did we only just have 3 this year?
No, you should have a handout that has additional ones.
A lot of handouts on them.
Yeah.
The 3 that's being mentioned are the ones that
Oh, okay,
were previously
and the rest of those, got it. So those are all the ones. So do we want to reach out? That's why I'm asking, to all of those or just those three?
I'd be inclined personally to say just those three, but if someone were to step forward and say, I'd really like to come and advocate for why I think it's a good idea, I wouldn't want to stop them from having that opportunity. But I'm not going to reach out to them unless they want to instigate the presentation. Yeah. Initiate. Thank you. That's a better word than instigate.
Mr. Stonehill?
I'm fine with having the three, or, reach out for these other folks if they do want to come, but I mean, I only see the three here on the list, so.
Ms. Bender?
I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure, because I know in the past we've had more people come to request. So I just wanted to make sure nobody was forgotten.
Mr. Bush?
I'm fine with inviting those three, but I'd like to see if maybe we can get Mr. Franklin to come because they deal with a lot of these agencies, and maybe he would be able to articulate how it benefits the county from a cost perspective.
Okay. So could we arrange for the Director of Social Services?
Yes, I just found out he's going to be away from March 16th through March 31st. So he could come in April.
Can we, in the meantime, have representatives from these three so we don't slow things down?
Yes.
And then can I ask someone to make an inquiry with either the Commonwealth Attorney's Office or the Sheriff's Office with regard to Empower House? It's a domestic violence support program, and I want to see if they have anything in their budget with regard to that, because that, in my opinion, and as a former law enforcement officer, is also a much needed service for the court, or probably the Commonwealth's Attorney or Sheriff's Office. If you could reach back to both of them and see where that is, because that's, thank you.
And Madam Chair, I'll have, for our next board meeting, I'll have a report from DWRC what the extra cost is. We just haven't finalized the budget, especially with an interim director.
Very good, thank you. All right. Go right ahead, Mr. Kusberry.
Okay, the next slide is budget impacts. Just list some examples of some of the impacts that we're going to have this year with our budget. Of course, we're always faced with the state funding, how much money we'll be getting from the state. We're working on trying to get those numbers. I met with Dr. Benson on Monday to talk to him about his budget, and he will be prepared to present his budget no later than March 31st. He may, at one time I thought he might be ready on March 24th, but it probably will be March 31st that he'll be prepared to present a budget. One thing we have in here listed is compensation cost. We're going to give you an example of what some costs could be for a 2%, 3%, or 4% pay increase for county employees. We discussed outside agencies. Health insurance actually went down this year. I think it was like a 4% decrease in health insurance. Juvenile detention and the regional jail funding increased this year by over $100,000. We have a significant number of new position requests, and also some requests to, upgrade some positions. We'll be showing that to you. Some departments have new initiatives that they want to put in place. We have the cigarette tax issue that we'll be addressing, and what's involved in that. We received, did we send a copy of that? We received this afternoon from the GWRC a preliminary estimate of how much additional funding counties will receive under the Stimulus Act. and it looks like King George County will be receiving over $5 million. So we'll be looking at how that can be used. And one thing that the board needs to consider and needs to take action on is the true up of the Revenue Stabilization Fund. 2 years ago, I believe the board used a little bit over $100,000 of the Revenue Stabilization Fund to balance the budget. Last year, the 1.6 million was used. So there's a little over $700,000 remaining in the Revenue Stabilization Fund. Per the board's policy, the policy states that the board will maintain 3% of the fund, of the general fund amount in the Revenue Stabilization Fund. And for a $90 million budget, that would be $2.7 million. So we need to give some thought about how we can get some additional funding back into the Revenue Stabilization Fund. In the past, what we've done, sometimes in the past, when we had some surplus funds after the fiscal year, we would put some of that funds back into the revenue stabilization.
Go ahead, Mr. Granger.
I was just going to ask, I know that obviously with the CARES Act funding, that we put a fair amount of money towards public safety salaries, which helped us to save money in the long run. But I'm assuming we still took that 1.6 million out of the Revenue Stabilization Fund, and then all of those extra savings were just extra money left at the end.
It looks like it.
Sorry?
It does look that way.
Okay. And so then what you're saying is we need to find a way to start paying that back. So if we use some of that money that was left over that we were able to save from that, that would be a route we could maybe take.
I think so. I need to look at that and discuss that with staff, but
okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stonehill?
Nothing right now.
Ms. Bender?
I don't have anything at this time.
Mr. Bush?
Madam Chair, is this for discussion on budget impacts or is it for questions? Because I have a list of some impacts I would like to.
Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the stimulus monies that you mentioned, I'm concerned about how those could actually be used and the limitations on what they're applicable to and what they're not applicable to. You mentioned the debt stabilization fund, or the revenue stabilization fund. That is of concern, and I think we need to shore that up because it also is in keeping in line with our policy. Also, last budget cycle, we decided to put on hold our debt mitigation plan, which actually freed up a lot of revenues that we were paying in interest and gave us more cash flow. I would like to at least look at a way to get back on track with that. But some concerns that I have, and I have a couple of notes. One, it hasn't really been openly discussed, but we are looking at a 4-cent tax increase off the bat for the debt service on the courthouse, on the bond that we just pulled for the courthouse that we approved last year. Also, is the talk about the 5% for state employees compensation increase. So state employees isn't just SOQ positions at the school. So if we gave it to them, there would be a gap because they have more employees than are actually SOQ employees. But that also pertains to the sheriff's office because we're only allotted so many deputies through state compensation board, and we have more than they would recommend. And then there's Department of Social Services, which is state employees as well. So that's some hefty things to be considering. And also one thing that I think is we're going to have to address, and it's probably going to be a hard pill to swallow, but since we initiated parts of our compensation plan for public safety, we've lost like 12 firefighters since we passed that. It's extremely hard to recruit new people, and there are laws that if a shift isn't properly manned, if one person calls out sick, by law they can't roll that fire truck out because it has to be manned by certain people. So I think we definitely need to look at how we can help out with recruiting and retention of public safety, because that's the one thing. You hit 911, somebody's got to show up, and that's of concern. So that's all some budget things that is rolling around in my head as I'm looking at these lines all those costs come up, but you only have so much revenues, and it's starting to look like a little hole.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Kusenberry.
No, I was going to say it's actually a big hole, but
And Mr. Granger, I did not forget you, sir.
Okay, I apologize. I just had a quick question for the optional programs. I see the COLAs. So each percent of COLA looks to me to be about $134,185. So 2% would be 268, 3% would be 402, but for 4%, I come up with a calculation of 536, but it shows 585. Is there a reason there's a $50,000 difference on that?
it could be a math error. I don't know, but yes.
Okay.
Now, is this a good time to talk about COLAs? Or, because my thoughts on COLAs, I'm not a fan of COLAs. I like merit increases, pay for performance. And one thing staff has talked about is possibly having a merit increase pay for performance system where back the way it was done years ago, the performance evaluations would take place in November and December, and the merit increases would go into effect on January of each year. And for example, the range might be 0 to 5%, but you would only budget, say, 3%, because everybody's not going to get 5%. So that's something we've been talking about. Didn't know the board's thoughts on merit for pay for performance versus COLAs. Don't need an answer now, just something to think about as we move forward.
And I note, I'm not sure, we are on that slide. Just want to make sure. Staff position requests. I don't see a legal assistant on there for our county attorney.
That's, they look today, that's already in his budget.
So there are funds available to make that happen even before July 1. Can I pull the board?
It's part-time position.
Yeah.
Okay.
If he already has it, then it's up to
Yeah.
Mr. Britton to hire someone. And obviously, I'm not going to try to get involved in who should be hired, but yeah.
No, I don't mean that. Just.
Yeah, if there's money for it, then he should be using it once he finds someone that's qualified and can do the job.
Please, yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I asked the same question because I didn't see it here either, and staff checked and saw that the position, part-time position, was already funded.
Thank you. And so will there be, say, individual department heads or chief, or will they be coming later to review the staff requests to justify?
I think they need to.
I do too. Yeah, I do too. If you can schedule time for that, we would greatly appreciate that.
And also something, again, I've talked about today is that I think the departments that have requested multiple positions, they need to prioritize those positions.
Yeah, if having a wish list is great, but we need to start with needs and then wants, and yeah, that would be very helpful.
Madam Chair, I have.
Go ahead, Ms. Bender.
With all the new election laws, is there any need for any more in the registrar's office?
I thought that her budget increase was at a position. Apparently she did not request a position.
I just want to make sure that they're able to be fully staffed, especially since these election laws are now here to stay. So,
Which we'll confirm.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. Stonehill. Members of the board.
Mr. Quizmayor, what was the true up percentages that you had quoted before?
Okay, the true up is 3% of the total county budget. For example, if the county budget is $90 million, we would need $2.7 million in that account. We're supposed to be putting, the policy states that if you're getting close to that number, we should be putting in the equivalent of 1 cent on the tax rate every year. which right now is, I think it's $270,000. So we haven't been doing that, so we need to catch up. Don't have to do it all in 1 year, but we do need to have a plan to catch up.
So citizens, remember that number he just said, 1 cent, $270,000. That drives an awful lot of decisions at the end of the day. That's the magic number. Anything else, Mr. Kusenberry?
Not on that slide. Any
Okay,
additional
very
questions
good.
on that?
Citizens, did you have any additional questions?
Just one quick.
Go ahead, Mr. Say.
You mentioned, I think you said that the juvenile detention and regional jail will be up 100,000. And looking at the next slide, looks like the existing cost is only like 170, so it's almost doubling.
Which slide are you looking at?
Well, the one's up now, if I'm reading it right, it says juvenile detention is 66,000, the regional, Rappahannock Regional is 98,000. I thought you said on the previous slide on budget impact, I thought you said that the juvenile detention regional funding was up over 100K.
Yes, that's those two numbers. I mean, juvenile detention is increasing by the 66,000, and the regional jail is increasing by that 90,000. I couldn't recall exactly how much it was, but I knew it was over 100 grand.
Okay. Thanks.
We can get you, if you need a copy, we can get you a copy of their budgets summary, just so you know how much we do spend. We spend quite a bit for the regional jail and juvenile detention.
So I'm actually on the jail board of directors, and I can tell you a great deal of that has to do with overtime due to lack of staffing, as well as we did implement a small COLA, I believe. I can't tell you off the top of my head the percentage because that was at least 2 months ago, but I'd be happy to pull my books for you and provide them to you for the jail board of directors. But that, we're really stretched thin there as far as staffing goes, and having a difficult time both retaining and recruiting new staff. And so the theory behind the increase was to try to retain the officers that we have and try to attract new ones. Sure.
Okay.
Anything else from citizens? No? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kusenberg.
Okay, the next item we have is upcoming work sessions. At your work session on March the 17th, we will have a line-by-line item review for the Human Resources and Treasurer's Office. We've provided you a copy of this 11/17 expenditure reports preliminary. If you would take a look at that prior to our next work session, we can go over that in more detail. We'll give you an executive summary of some issues, more information on some of these impacts and things. And we want to start getting some revenue numbers and try to get as soon as possible some good numbers as to see where we are on the revenue side. So also maybe at that meeting, would you like us to add another department, one of these departments that are requesting additional staffing also to attend?
So I note that there are a number of positions and increases for community development. So could we perhaps ask Ms. Hall if she is available to join us? Is that amenable to the rest of the board? Yes?
And if Ms. Hall is not available, who would you like to hear from?
Chief Moody?
Okay.
Yes?
Okay, we'll start with community development, and if she can't be there, we will then talk to Chief Moody, and one of the two will be there.
Great, thank you.
And then we want to schedule 2 additional work sessions. As I stated, I think Dr. Benson would like to wait until March 31st. That's a Wednesday to present his budget. Would you like to schedule a work session for March the 24th?
Are you all good for Wednesdays still? I know. Yeah.
I can, yeah. I switch things around for myself, so yeah, I'll be able to make that work.
Okay. Board members, yes. Citizens, yes. Wednesdays are still working out. Okay, yes. So March 24th will be work session number 4. Well, you just have to move the school. Yeah.
Yes.
Off of that.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Did we want to move anything from 5 up, like the PPTRA, or
Yeah, that's very possible.
to swap them?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. And yes, and of course, we will add, well, maybe we'll have Chief Moody that night too.
That's a good idea.
And then March 31 will be
That'll be, we'll add the
schools.
on March
Yep.
31st, and then we'll have revenue forecast by then. And,
Okay.
and we'll be presenting some budget options, because I know we're gonna have a gap, and give you some options how we can close that gap.
Very good. And I am told for both work sessions, March 24 and March 31, the boardroom is available.
Excellent.
6 o'clock. 6 o'clock still working out? Yes?
One other item, Madam Chair, as
Sure.
the board is looking at the Board of Supervisors budget, if you would give us some thought to your travel, training, conferences, let us know your thoughts regarding those items.
So could we ask everyone to have those in by this coming Monday, close of business? Is that possible? Does that give you enough time or?
No, that's fine. We'll email each board member a copy of what the current budget shows for Board of Supervisors.
Yeah. We cut everything. Yeah, there are some
Both of us use one.
trainings though that are virtual that may be beneficial. So they're not high dollar things. Yes, exactly.
The big one will be VACO, if they have VACO
do it.
conference again. And that is very beneficial if the board would, it's a very good thing to do.
That's November by then.
It's November.
Yeah. So March 15th, Monday, March 15th, close of business. Board members, please have your request, travel, training, spend plan into Mr. Cusenberry, please. Anything else, sir?
That's all I have tonight. Thank you very much.
All right, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Go ahead, Mr. Bush.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So earlier you said that the county administrator input on here was your predecessor. Are you going to have the opportunity, let's say for next budget work session, to take a look at this and maybe do some alignment on that?
We are starting to get into it. Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Just doing a lot of catch up right now.
I got you. And I appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much, Travis.
So can we clarify this? The agenda says 5 p.m. for the next meeting. Oh, that's right. It's the joint meeting.
Joint meeting, yes.
Yep. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn till Tuesday, March 16th at 5 p.m. here in the boardroom.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye.